Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here and having me and inviting me for this talk. This talk will be around the story that I'm thinking about behind the machine error, glitches, mistake, and I will say a bit more or a lot more about it. But I want to start by saying a little bit uh, about myself. So I'm a creative technologist based in New York. I started with a background in social work and then moved for digital art and deal with physical computation, spaces, sensors, VR, and all around this storytelling. Moved to interactive storytelling, did an MFA in cinema and television, and moved to US as part of a fellowship in MIT in the Open Documentary Lab by starting this kind of research that I'm going to share with you. And for the last 3 years around dealing with those kind of questions of mental illness in AI and machine learning. Um, so I wanted to kind of start by setting the expectation for this talk and lay out how it's gonna be today. Um, I will start by describing the research, share a few examples that I gather along and kind of like either develop and hands-on because that's the way I'm working. I'm trying to always experiment with what I'm thinking about, but also I will share stuff that I'm like speculating about or trying to look from like kind of like look from the other way on things that I'm discovering as I'm going. And after that, I want to share with you a little bit a work in progress that I'm doing called Marrow, which is an interactive theater piece. It's kind of funny to say it right now because due to the coronavirus, every we are debating now what's going to happen with physical spaces work. So until like 3-4 months ago, it was interactive theater piece. Now we are thinking about going back to the virtual realm. So I will talk about this a little bit. So I will share what we did in the development phase of that work and a few of the tools that we developed, and uh, and that's it more or less. It's gonna be a little bit dense. I will hope that I will not talk so fast because that's the way I'm talking when I'm a little bit nervous, and I hope it's gonna not be too long because there is a lot to talk about. I will also, as because it's like pre-recorded, I try to like implement your question during my talk, as it's gonna. I like to have a kind of conversation when I'm having those kind of talk, so I try to create that kind of a vibe also here. But I want to start with like a fun example to describe what I mean when I'm looking at error and mistakes in machines. So I want to start by this kind of example. So if I'm writing, let's just start by English to Somali. I want to say to show you what I mean by uh, so if I'm writing whatever from English to Somali, hey everyone. Okay, and then I'm moving that back to Somali to English. So what I wanted to show you that if I'm writing whatever in Somali to English, and then I'm starting to break that down, uh, uh, like some kind of weird things are starting to happen in the translation. Um, I don't have it I don't have to do it today. I hope you did well in this difficult time. Yeah. Let's do it faster. Sorry, I'm always very curious to see what's come back from it. Play button. I hope you have done well in this difficult time. It's always very random and I never know what's come back, even though I tried it before. But so basically what's happening here is you can do it in every language. It's not specifically for Somali. You can do it in Greek, you can do it in Hebrew, you can do it in Arabic. Basically what's happening is that in order to, in the very dry sense of the training set, data set of Google Translate, in order to gain the understanding in the context of Google Translate, they need to train on a huge data set of words, right? In order for, because same words have different meaning in different sentences, there is the need to have a huge amount of data sets in order for the machine to gain the knowledge of understanding when you put the same words in different sentences. And because of that, because the machine or code or script always are trained to give us output in any given input, that you can see how the machine here are kind of struggle to understand what exactly am I trying, am I what exactly do I want it to bring me back, right? What exactly from the huge data set that it has can it find from that mess, from the nonsense that I'm bringing it, what exactly is the meaning from the non-meaning input. So it's bringing some kind of output. I hope that it makes sense, but it's from the personal, from the human side of it. When I saw those kind of examples, I felt very, very much connected. 4 years ago, I got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And when that happened, I felt very much relieved because suddenly I felt like I have this sense of community or sense of understanding what happening to me, right? What didn't make sense. But also I suddenly started to look at my brain and as a sense as a kind of like group of input that create this kind of distorted output. And when I started to look at that, at my brain in this kind of way, it's also kind of like balanced me in a personal way. But also I started to ask this question in a bigger sense, and I started to think if it's happened to us, if as human beings we can have input that create this kind of triggered this kind of distorted output. So if we are pushing machine to have mental capacities, machine will also have the capacity for mental disorder. And if I'm bringing machine this kind of like distorted input, and it's already creating this kind of like distorted output for me, machine will also have the capacity for mental illness. So this is how I started this research, and this is what motivated me from a very personal point of view. My work also always is very much driven from my personal stories, and that's what led to this research. So I'm exploring this from three points of view, and I will share it from very fast examples. So from the data point of view, I was very fascinated um, from what we saw now in Google Translate. And because I'm a very visual person, I wanted to explore ways to visualize that. So I looked in Coco dataset. Coco dataset is a dataset of two, I will show you, that's the beauty of having Zoom lectures, I think. It's a data set of 250 million label images. And label images, I mean that you can label dogs, you can label humans, and basically it's an open source data set. So you can download, you can use it, and you can have like those label of buildings and human and tables and everything. So you can use it. And the power of having label images is basically that I can just like create these images based on text, right? Because I wanted to understand how I can use text like and have an output of a visual output. So I started by giving it a very abstract text, and I used Bible text. I wanted to see what is happening when I'm giving it some sentence that it never seen before. There is no like concrete ideas, right? Because Coco Dataset is based on very concrete ideas like building, roads, cars. So there is no concrete ideas in Bibles. There is a very obscure and abstract concepts of like God. Then God would say, "Let there be light," and there was light, right? So what will be the output for that from that kind of data set? God created the great sea monster and every living creature that moves. It's not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner. So you can see there is no like really understanding of what is the social meaning of that, right? There is a very deep social meaning for us as human, for like the gender point of view, for feminist point of view, and the patriarchal point of view. But there is no like for the machine, it's nothing, right? But when I saw those kind of things coming back, I was like, I felt there is something that talked back to me from those kind of images. So together with Runaway ML is this beautiful platform that created for artists and creators to interact with machine learning models without a lot of code or knowledge. So together with them, we developed this interface for people to just interact with it. So you can write in this platform whatever you want, like let's say the same things. Hey, F1, thank you for. You see, and the image is constantly generating itself as I'm writing a new word, because like the Google Translate, the model here trying to re-understanding or regenerate the image based on the new idea or the new concept of the sentence as it tried to figure out what I mean. So we released this platform to public use in a web format, and the reason it was used it was released before anything happened with my project. It was way before. It was because one of my goals is to use storytelling as a system to make sense of this complex this complex like system as abstract systems like machine learning to include more people in the conversation, right? And I wanted to see what people will do or feel about using those kind of system, and what will be the result or the emotion that will arise out of those output. Because I felt something is starting there. I felt that I'm visualizing the in-between spaces of the code of the machine, or between the input and the output. And it's something that I felt that I'm getting somewhere that I was interested in, but I wanted to feel what people are using. And it started to be very viral. So people started to create a lot of output. But in the meantime, the press was treating it as like horrifying, right? Because that's how the narrative is being used. The narrative is being used for AI is like very intimidating. We are the journalism or the media is creating this kind of like making the general audience, general people like very much afar, and not really educating them to or all of us to get into this conversation together or understanding really how things are working. And I was very disappointed to see like words like horrifying images, because yeah, it's like it's a mix of a lot of images together, and sometimes it's, you can see what you want to see, you can see that it's horrifying, but it wasn't. It was just like what you put inside of it, that's what you get. And you can say that it's like, you can see horrifying images, but it wasn't. And in order to break this narrative, in order to break the idea around AI that is creating this risk or it will take over the world, which is not. AI is still very stupid, and it will be stupid, like in my idea, because it is based on what humans are creating out of it. It's we just need to create more application to allow the absurdity and error to occur and to embrace it, in order to reimagining how we are going to change the thing we're implementing inside of it, right? Because like I really like uh, this quote, because it's simply what you put inside of it, that's what you see. But also like technical problem are the philosophical problem, right? Because like I said before, machine learning will just give you any output, right? That's what it's trained to do. And like it might be the incorrect output, but it's not a glitch or a bug anymore. That's what was so interesting to me to start to think. And I think this experiment started to shift my mind. It's a learning problem, and there is something that the data is one thing, but it's also, we are starting to view that this machine learning is starting to be like also kind of how we train those machines to react. So from the data set, it's one thing, but I'm also exploring how the model itself is being rebuilding the algorithm itself. So if we're taking the algorithm of the images, for example, it's called Generative Adversarial Network, GAN, and we think how it's being structured. It's structured by two networks. One is discriminator and the other one is generator. And they are basically built in this kind of like competition state. The discriminator need to understand what is it's being trained on the real data set, and it needs to catch what are the real images from the data set and what are the fake images that the generator is generating by itself. And it's really need to like just creating this to catch it and to say, no, this is fake. And the generator needs to kind of like trick the discriminator, and in order to believe that all the images are actually came from the data set, so it's not going to catch it. So this mind or this algorithm mode state is basically stuck in this like mood of like a conflict mood, right? Or this like loop of a battle that's constantly like asking itself what is real or what is not. So like if we will, for example, for just a second, like ask ourselves if AI will achieve its promise and will become this kind of independent thinking entity, what kind of an independent thinking entity will grow out of this kind of like a mind that built it? Or if AI will achieve its promise and like independent thinking entity will grow out of this like state mode, it will have a really like paranoid state mode, right? It will have this kind of a mind that's constantly asking itself what is real, what is not, constantly like doubt itself, constantly like living this kind of like life that distrust, self-distrust. And so when I started to question this gun and this kind of like how the algorithm is working, I started to ask myself, why aren't we like doubting ourselves and not building networks that are more like in this like teamwork or team member, right? That are like trying to compensate on one another or like help one another when one network is making a mistake and cover up on mistakes for one another. like being more kind for one another, right? Why is this is not the way that we are trying to build the next intelligent or the next technology for our generation? Why we are constantly like replicating the way we are thinking intelligent should like come? And the answer is very simple. The answer is like we believe intelligent will grow more efficient and more stronger when it's based on competition, which there are like research to support that. But do we want our future to be more efficient, right? Like this technology is growing this kind of like world of that's supported by these capitalism forces, right? Do we want to keep engaging with that? And this is there is beautiful article that I'm really sorry, I just covered, but I recommend you to go over it and read. And Wendy is writing about this relationship in code of master and slave, and how we replicate in that in the basic sense of how every code is creating this kind of like command, like master that command the program to actually like um, uh, listen. I don't know how to say it right now, but in machine learning, it's really, really obvious that that's what we are doing. So I looked at also training environment, and the very like, we are all result of where and how we've been raised, right? I look at myself and I see the direct result of the house and the environment I've been raised in. So for example, I looked in like training environment for genetic models. And this is like an environment where those genetic models needs to like understand how to move their bodies and like, understand how to move their joints and climb the stairs. It's endless environment, it's endless training environment. And if I will need to like understand how to move my body like that, I will grow crazy, Why the training environment also like in this kind of like very aggressive design mode, or this environment for reinforcement learning model. Here the agent needs to just like learn how to again move its body and learn how to walk. But if we will engage in this like for just a second speculate on the story side of it, this is a very, very lonely terrain of never ending. No one is waiting for this agent in the end of it. No one is like telling it when it's gonna end, and it's just walking and walking and walking and walking forever, Or this like more like traditional combat first person shooting training environment. This agent needs to shoot its own kind. That's what it said. It needs to shoot other AI agents. What kind of AI agent will grow out of like outside those kind of environment, right? Like an AI agent that's like just don't have any, it's a sociopath kind of like agent, So uh, so those kind of questions are really like bothering me, And if we think about like reinforcement learning uh, um, state of mind, it's really stay with us. Like the mental baggage of reinforcement learning, that it's come really from behavioral psychology. It's really something we are carrying with us as human for a long time. What kind of mental baggage will the machine will carry? We think about our code as like cold-blooded and selfish, but maybe we don't need to. We think about it like that, and therefore we treat it as such. And what if we will change the narrative? Like just as like to give a positive example, like this algorithm needed to like finish this boat, needed to finish the game, and then it discovered that it's like if it will stay in the game, it will start gaining more and more and more points. So it didn't change, it didn't finish the game. This is another like kind of glitch that I'm like tracking on. So it's like just like a game that it's like a bot that understood, why should I finish the game? I'm gaining more points if I'm staying here. And this is a totally humanizing of the algorithm, but we can relate to that in a very like we can relate to those kind of point of view. Like this is a really fast example. Oh, sorry. This is a really fast example, but I want to show you that if we were thinking about the other, right? This is the way kind of like the models see the world, and we put them in those kind of game environment. But if you want to think about how the others view in the world, this is the way the other view the world, right? Like the model doesn't see the game environment like humans, and that's why human like learn so fast, because we learn by detecting the object. But AI has like different kind of texture and it's seeing in a different way. So if I'm like just answering, I wanted to stop before I'm moving to Marrow and to engage with two questions. Um, Nina and Alon ask whether is there like a risk of projecting a human attribute on the machine itself, and more particularly not in the data sets and stuff, but more of like our idea of human mental illness, which is not really understood yet. And yes, of course, but I'm not trying to project what is like my idea of like schizophrenic or bipolar and say, oh yeah, I'm detecting those kind of things. Although there are researchers doing that now in order to understand what things are going on. Also like in order to understand how can we reflect on those mental illness for ourselves. I am trying to say things are going wrong and we might need to give them a different kind of definition than just say it's glitch or bug, you know. And maybe like 10 years ago we didn't say like animals have depressions, and now we're saying it, and we have animal therapists, you know. So it's all about how we um, we give language to stuff, you know. It's all about how we decide to engage with things and give them the possibility of becoming. So if we will say we can call those glitches or disorder in any way we want. I'm not saying it's the schizophrenic, the human kind of schizophrenic. I'm saying there is something that if we will go and make them be more independent and push them to be more with the mental capacity that we want them to be, we also need to prepare ourselves to something that will be the disorder of that, because that's every intelligent system has both sides. Every complex system have the dysfunctional part of it, and we need to understand the dysfunctional part of the complex system we are building. Alon added for that, what is the particular human mental illness that you're discovering of the new path of social thinking? And I hope I answered that by all this example that I gave. John asked, I wonder about like the yeah, you can read it, but like in how like the human like is kind of like making projecting the risk of like underestimating the AI, right? Like because AI is not human-like, and I'm not saying it's human-like, and I'm not saying that the mental illness will be human-like I said now. But I think also like when you engage in different kind of narrative, right? And I really like what you said now, like I am viewing the mental illness as the foreign other, right? Because I do feel, as in a personal point of view, I do feel the stigma of the mental illness, and I do feel it's very easy to engage conversation about mental illness through this project, and I love it. I love the conversation that appear with other participants that have some similar experience in life, and also I love to have conversation about mental illness in general through this project. But also I think there is no underestimating, because it's just reimagining how we can redesign the system and understand what can go wrong, and through what can go wrong. And mental illness is not something that is wrong, right? I think there is beautiful part of it, but I also think there is a lot of suffering for it. But also like I do think when you understand what you implement into the system and you're not asking yourself the whole range of questions, you are not understanding how you can redesign a system without replicating your history to it. So I hope it's kind of like answering it. I'm kind of like moving forward, sorry. So, and also just to say another point for that, also I hope you stop forcing your own dominant, point of view of the system. And because you engage with the otherness, you start to see how the others, like how the other see the world, So regarding Marrow, Maro is a co-creation with Avner. Avner Pellet is my collaborator. It's a co-production with Raycaster, Atlas 5, NFB, and MIT Open Documentary Lab. It's basically, the idea is to bring people to a family house environment, very much as like, we took the, like the training environment and put a family as a training environment, a house as a training environment. And we want people to come as to embody a few of like the most influential machine learning model, and to embody their story, the story of the glitch, the mistake, and bug. And we wrote a script for them to tell the story of those systems in space of a family as a dysfunctional family. So that's kind of the story, how they play along. And as it turned out, what was very important for us is the physical space, to bring people to a physical space out of like what we imagine AI is, and to bring this space to life as they engage in the conversation about these dysfunctional bugs and play this dysfunctional family together. So it's supposed to like become this like magical house that has a life of its own. So in January, this January, together with NFB and Atlas 5, we prototype this interactive installation focusing on the GAN, the generative model that I just described. And the participant, the way you interact with this experience, you basically have, you sit in a dinner family, and on the plates there are texts that you need to read, and as you read it, you move the experience forward. So I just want to add, before I'm starting, a personal note about sharing a work in progress, especially one that is a physical work, especially one that is being experienced with stranger and being activated as you move in space, as you interact with the work, interact with other, interact with the system, is very weird and kind of taking down from the experience itself. And I hope you can be kind of the way I'm going to do it, and imagine how it's felt like. It's a very sensual kind of work. There is a lot of sounds and images and things that happen around you. So I hope you can just like take that under consideration when we are talking about the work, because images never gonna grasp that feeling. As I talked, there will be a movie that show a little bit. So you enter this house, you receive, everything is a prototype here. So you receive this text about what is the model. You have headphones that guide you in the space, and you hear different things from what other feeling. So it's like your inner thought, and you have dinner and move objects, and the object also have some kind of projections, and character have and it's a mother, father, brother, sister, and it's a really, starting with a very normal family dinner that really goes wrong, and you project the feeling of character and things that you hear about yourself, and there is like your shadows that transfer to somewhere else from the training set that I will describe soon. So I wanted to show a sample of the tools that we developed through talking about what is the content of that installation, and also hopefully answer Sujang, I hope I'm saying your name right, about the boundary between the creator and AI, And there is a distinct boundary from my point of view. AI is just a tool from my point of view. It's a creative tool. It's a beautiful tool. It's surprising me with with the output I'm receiving, and I'm pushing the network to communicate their story that I want to project, but I'm building the network to do what I want them to tell. So it's kind of like the creative rule is very, very upfront. Um, and yeah, I do think it's a new kind of alternative storytelling, because the storytelling is very, very challenging to tell. And I will say something more soon. So Marrow is based on perfect family dataset. The reason behind that is there is an idea of like reimagining, uh, like reimagining a family, right? We are in a family dinner, and there is a distance between you and uh, and 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 the system, right? But there's also the way you view yourself through those kind of images. When you Google happy family dinner, there's nothing like my family, nothing like any other family that I ever saw of my friends, right? So there is already this kind of like the way we train our system is nothing like those data sets, nothing like the data sets that are really represent our life. But also those images are already simulation of families. So there was something about that that I really uh, felt that is like grasping this knowledge of training on not only data sets that are not representing our life, but also are already taking a step further from like um, another step further, because they are simulation of the data set, like in a sort of way. But also like in a more like um, storytelling based, uh, this knowledge of like uh, talking about happy family dinner and like thinking about simulation. The knowledge of simulation already contained this idea of paranoia, or this knowledge of like something underneath it we want to cover up, right? There is like this fear of like if someone will uh, discover what exists underneath it, something will really fall apart inside of me. So this is like kind of the story of that family. And we want tools to scrap this data set, uh, because having data set that only based on happy family dinner is creating this very, very small um, uh, data set, because it's a very unique and particular tag of words. So in order to actually managing to do that, we created tools to augment this data set. And if you, like you see, there is like the same family, kind of like we duplicate them and to we shuffle them to sit in different places, so we can have the same image uh, over and over again, but like just the same people sitting in different places. So there were a few techniques that we created in order to have the ability to expand the expand our scope of images, and we wrote about it here, and you can read more about it the way we did it. And the idea was to have this kind of distorted family concept, to have this engagement around this like perfect versus error, and like because the output was very, very distorted, and the idea of the participant playing this perfect family that goes wrong. And we worked on those kind of output, right? We worked on these very distorted families, and we worked with a remote team that we needed to also have our creative output on it. I didn't want only the network uh, to have this not very charming output. So we built a tool that allow us to uh, uh, enter this latent space that in between spaces of the images together as a team. And also we wrote about it here. So you are more than welcome to read about them. In both articles, there are open source tools that you can use. What this tool allowed us is also to work in a team together, and we worked with an animator that animated on these latent spaces without like creating this is very like, you know, hard-coded thing for like people that don't really know how to enter latent space of machines. So we build tools for us to understand how to work as a team with those kind of rigid technology. We implemented networks that will allow the machine to view the space in a different way, not to view it like that, but to view it like in the left side. And the idea was like really to chain network together, because there isn't mental illness in machine learning right now, right? But there is this speculation of how can we engage in that question. So we wanted to chain network together in order to create this knowledge of a space that view and go wrong and doesn't really manage to see the space and it should see it. So we integrated more network to chain together in this kind of like question. And we used like this tool that you paint, but we connected it to a webcam, so it created this distorted image. So that kind of like point of view and thinking was like how we can take tools that weren't intended to be in this platform, but to move it to like a different kind of intended. It's very much like a glitch art kind of like point of view. And you see that when we put the table, this is a table from the prototype, like before we build it, and you see that the boats are actually the glasses. So we like took glasses and transformed them to boats, you know? So that was kind of like the idea of how you will view this set. And people were like viewing as shadow around them. And we cloned the participant voice, so when you have the headphone, you will actually hear your own voice, but with the script that we wrote. So it's like kind of like how we will guide people without having humans in space. It's only the machine is there. So we needed tools to also move you around in space, and we tried constantly to figure out solution how only the system is moving you, but we needed you to engage with the system. So we constantly added more tools to find solution how to engage the participants. And I think that's also answered the previous question, how this AI and storytelling is constantly asking us to think about new ways to dissolve the gimmick, right? But also like it's kind of adding gimmicks with dissolving the gimmicks in order to bring and adding people to space. So as you see, there is like these headphones that it was bone conduction. It's not inside your ear, it's here, so you can engage with others, but also hear your own voice talking to you. And the idea was we wanted to create the same simulation as the network, that you have this conflict thoughts, you have this conflict to network that in conflict with themselves. So we wanted to create that like in human life, right? I'm now talking, but at the same time my mind is thinking something else. So I wanted to create that for the human. So they will sit in this dinner and they have text to read to you, and they will read text, but at the same time they will hear different kind of thought about the person that they're reading the text to. So to create this kind of like opening the gap, the emotional gap of the participant as the participant, because don't forget, those are 4 strangers in a room, and they are not actors, and this is we needed them to feel comfortable and to open up. So that was one of the tools. And we tested it during the January. It was funny and great, and what we discovered, how the physical spaces is bringing people together has so much power, and we so much need these spaces of nonsense and stupidity and freedom in order to engage in those kind of like complex and conversation, and people started to engage with the props and much more outside the script that it was. I wanted to go back to Nina's question about projecting our idea about mental illness, because that's exactly that. Like, we wanted to create this nonsense space, that the space is coming alive, and you see the faces, and you see there was a lot of like things going on around them that we might needed to clean a little bit more. It was still a development phase, but also the script was between my experience of like understanding, like I wrote a lot about from my own understanding, but it was very hard to have conversation with the production around like how not to be too explicit about what is the experience of mental illness, so it was very hard for me to fight or to insist about this space of like, you don't need to explain too much, things can be like abstract and live in the abstract space. So I don't know if I'm sure I didn't reach the point that I succeeded to be in the abstract zone, but I know that I didn't manage to convince people that work with me that it can also stay in the abstract, and you don't need to explain too much, because the projection on the idea about mental illness are still very much in this stigmatic place, and we don't have a lot of room to live project in the between world. So now with the coronavirus, although we are in love in these physical spaces and bringing people to the physical spaces, and I think this is like the most beautiful thing that happened to me in this work, because I'm usually working in the digital zone, and we are moving to experiment in the virtual again. And it's actually pretty interesting to me, because we want to bring all this research to be more communicative in the virtual again. So what we are doing, and it's kind of answering Teresa's question, we want, first I will say, yes, I do think machine are able to explain themselves, but in a different way, right? Not in like human way, and we also need to rethink about the way we expect things to be explicit, because they already have tools to explain themselves, right? Like script and code, and like we already have a lot of like outputs that we bring back from the training process and stuff like that. So depending on what the tools that you bring, but one of the reference I'm thinking about now, and we are building something similar, is this multi-agent environment that will exhibit those assumptions of like multi-agents that react together in this kind of like the rules that we bring together to the rules that we bring into the agent from the research that we are pulling on GAN and the family, and to build an environment for them to exhibit online, so we can show the research for others to engage with. So that's the next step for now. That's it. I hope it was clear and you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. And thank you so much again for inviting me. Have a good one.